I love a good mystery. Things that are not explained absolutely fascinate me, especially when there is no ending to it. So something could still be going on. I'm Keith Woodhouse, and the idea of these videos is that I'll just have a chat. I don't edit them, mainly because I'm absolutely rubbish at editing. So I just may as well talk right the way through. So if I do stumble over my words or that, it's because this is genuine. D.B. Cooper, was he a winner or was he a loser? Now, I don't know if you know the story of D.B. Cooper, but it's absolutely fascinating. I don't know why he got the name D.B. Cooper, because he actually, let me take this back a bit. A man bought a ticket for a plane journey from Portland to Seattle in the early 70s. It was around about Thanksgiving time, which in America means there's a lot of movement and there's plenty of people on the planes, and the planes are full up and one thing and another. Anyway, this fella called Dan Cooper went and bought a ticket for this journey from Portland to Seattle. Later, someone called him D.B. Cooper. Where the D.B. comes from is anybody's guess. Probably lazy journalism, or they wanted to build up his part because Dan didn't sound that exciting. D.B. sounded a lot better. But whatever, he's gone down in history as D.B. Cooper as opposed to Dan Cooper. Now, he got on this plane. It was just a regular short-haul flight across from, as I say, from Portland to Seattle. My geography in America is not that good, but as far as I understand it was just a short plane trip. Now, he was dressed in a black suit, white tie, white shirt, black tie, sunglasses, which some people found unusual. That he's sitting on a plane in sunglasses, but he wore sunglasses, and ordered himself a drink and was just sitting there like any normal passenger, apart from the fact that he had a briefcase on his lap. Anyway, he called over the stewardess and said to her, "I want you to take this note." And as far as I understand it, she took it and just stuffed it in her pocket. And he noticed this and called her back, and he says, "I need you to read that note." So she looked at the note, and basically it says, "I have a bomb in my briefcase." Now, at this time, hijackings were going on all over the world from the late 60s through to the 70s. There was planes being hijacked all over the place, and this was done mainly for political reasons. And sometimes the terrorists got their demands, other times they were totally slaughtered by the authorities. But one way or another, hijacking was very much in the front of people's minds during those days. This note also said that he wanted $200,000, which probably equates to about $1 million today, all in $20 bills, used $20 bills. And he also asked for a rucksack to carry the money in and for parachutes. Now, this gave the indication that he was actually going to jump off the plane to escape. Now, this is where the clever part comes into it, because if he'd have had one parachute, they could have easily just cut a big hole in the top of it. So as soon as he jumped, woof, he'd hit the ground at 1,500 miles an hour. So that wouldn't work. But by ordering 4 parachutes, it made it seem as if he was going to take a hostage and make them jump with him. So the authorities then could not take the chance of sabotaging any of the parachutes. So he had one back parachute and one front parachute, the front parachute being a reserve parachute, which for parachuting is a regular thing, because obviously things go wrong, and if one fails, then you've got the other one, and you can open that, hopefully. Both fail. He also asked for fuel for the plane. He asked for the plane to be refueled. So while the authorities on the ground were getting his demands ready, the plane circled. The passengers was given some cock and bull story, I suppose, about not being able to land They certainly didn't say, oh, that bloke over there's got a bomb on his lap. I mean, you can imagine the panic that would have gone on then. But no, this fella sat there calmly and just allowed the plane to circle. When it landed, everyone got off the plane apart from DB Cooper and the staff. The airline staff stayed on the plane. Obviously, the pilot stayed on because he needed someone to fly the plane. But he also kept the stewardesses on board. Here's another clever part. He got them to pull the blinds down. Now, if he'd have landed on the tarmac without the blinds down, snipers could have taken him out easily. So he thought that through. He thought this is meticulous planning, right? He's got £200,000, $200,000. Why $200,000? Because of the weight of it. He's going to jump from an aeroplane. So he doesn't want too much weight. He's not going to ask for it in gold, is he? Because if he jumps out in gold, woof, he's strawberry jam once he hits that floor. Finished. So he's asked for £200,000, and presumably he's worked out the weight of £200,000 plus his weight, and the parachute is going to be able to take it comfortably. So this is all real meticulous planning from this fella, DB Cooper, who all the time is cool as a cucumber, just sitting there, absolutely cool. Another thing that he demanded, which was they found strange, was at the rear of the plane, he wanted the steps to be left down. The steps leading down to the tarmac, he wanted those to be left down. So to me, I wouldn't have thought the plane would be able to take off with that. But, you know, maybe the technology that they had then would just allow it to take off with the steps down. I couldn't imagine today a plane taking off with the steps down. You would have warning lights going off all over the place. But anyway, this plane was going to take off with the steps down on a particular door at the rear. It was a Boeing 727, I think. I don't know about planes, so presumably it's quite a big plane, quite a big airline passenger, or was for that time. As I say, this is the early 70s. Technology is not what it is today. Technology has come on so fast over the past 50 or so years that technology back then was nothing like it is today. So you've got to put this into perspective. So he's let all the passengers go, right? And the first they know about it is when they're hounded by the press. The press are there saying, what happened? And they realise what had happened and what danger that they were in, because he'd actually shown this stewardess inside his case, and she saw wires, sticks of dynamite, and whether there was a clock or not, I don't know, but I wouldn't have thought so, because it wouldn't have been a time bomb. But she certainly saw wires and what she thought were sticks of dynamite, right? So, but if someone tells you they have a bomb and they show you what looks like sticks of dynamite, you're going to believe that sticks of dynamite. You're not going to say, they're not sticks of dynamite, I don't believe it. Blow me up. So, anyway, back to DB Cooper. His final demand, or rather his next demand, was he wanted to be flown to Mexico City. I assume that Mexico City was somewhere where maybe they didn't have an extradition treaty with the United States. Maybe he had people waiting for him. They don't know, but he's got these parachutes, so they've got to assume that he's going to jump. So we've got this absolute meticulous planning. Apart from his appearance, all of the witnesses gave the same description. A man of about 40, 50, wearing a black suit, white shirt, black tie, and sunglasses. And they were each, or the stewardesses certainly, did identikit pictures of him. And they were virtually identical. So they knew exactly what he looked like. Now, if it was me, I would have gone on with a great big bushy beard. I would have spent 6 months growing a beard, like one of those hipsters. Well, they didn't have hipsters in those days, but the thing, like the one of the hillbillies. And growing one of these great big bushy beards. So he gets on the plane, and then once he's off, he shaves it off, and no one will be able to see who he is. A few false eyebrows. He would have fooled the identity kit people who drew his picture. But anyway, he's on the plane. He's on his way to Mexico City. And this is where the meticulous planning all falls apart. It really beggars belief as to what happens next. He's on his way to Mexico City. He knows he's on a flight path to Mexico City, but he didn't tell them what flight path he wants. He left that down to the pilot. So the pilot, he's decided the course. Whether he's being told by air traffic control, you've got to go this way, you've got to go that way, I don't know. But the pilot has decided the course. So didn't go in a straight line to Mexico City from Seattle. He's done a little detour, you see. So this then leads me to believe that DB Cooper, or Dan Cooper, he's spent all day making this plan. Right, that's it. It's foolproof, right? And he thinks, oh, I'm tired now. I've got up to the bit where I've got the passenger off the plane, I've got my money, I've got my parachutes, and I'm on my way. I'm going to bed and I'll do the rest in the morning. And he gets up in the morning and he thinks, oh, you know what? I'll just stick this together and that'll be it. And it's just like that. He's done all this meticulous planning, and you can imagine him with charts, plots, weights of money and things like that. And he gets up in the morning and he says, nah, he says, I fancy a game of golf. I'm going off to play golf or whatever. And I'll just put a few notes down and that's it. So he's flying along and it's night time. He's told the plane it's got to fly at 10,000 feet. Now, how he knows it's at 10,000 feet is anybody's guess, because as far as I know, he didn't go into the cockpit. He's not going to have anything on him that tells him you're flying at 10,000 feet. So he's got to take it that they are flying at 10,000 feet. He also told them to fly as slow as they can without crashing. Obviously, you fly too slow, the plane's going to come out of the sky. So he's going along. Pilot's chosen the route. He's chosen the height and the speed, and he gets himself ready to jump out the plane. So he's put on the parachute. He's strapped on his rucksack, and for some reason, right, maybe it was for safety reasons, I don't know, but he's taken his tie off. He's got a clip-on tie. He's taken this clip-on tie off, and it's got a tie pin on it, and he leaves it on the seat. So he goes up, goes to the door, tells the stewardesses, get up away from it. I don't want you anywhere near it. So whether they were in the cockpit, whether they were in their cabin, I don't know. But the point was that no one could actually see DB Cooper at this time. The only time they knew that something had happened, as I remember, was the captain, the pilot, he saw that there'd been a pressure drop. So that must have been him opening the back door, right, and going down the stairs and jumping. Now, this is what they're assuming, because no one has ever seen this. And something's just come to me. Something has just occurred to me, right, that I've never thought of before. So he's had the pressure drop, so he can only assume that he's jumped. Eventually, they go out and look, no sign of DB Cooper. So they've got to imagine that he's jumped. Now, he has used the parachute, which is the big round type. Now, those big round type parachutes have one job. That is to get you down safely. They very, very, very rarely fail. And that shows that he was an inexperienced skydiver, because you have virtually no control over direction on those parachutes, absolutely none. And I'll come to why I know that in a minute. But if he was an experienced skydiver, he would have asked for the ones where you've got control, where you can guide where you're going. So he is really left to the elements. And it was the elements, because he's jumped out of this plane. It's pitch black. He doesn't know where he is. And I think it was pouring with rain. So he's jumped in the worst possible conditions. I would imagine that if you was an experienced military jumper, that would be the worst possible conditions that you could imagine jumping out of. Let alone the fact that he's dressed in a suit, albeit that he hasn't got a tie on anymore, and a pair of loafers, slip-on shoes, right? And he's leapt out the back of this plane. So he's got no idea where he is. He's got no control over the parachute, right? He could have been jumping anywhere. All he knows is he was in between Seattle and Mexico City. And he couldn't even work out by how long the plane had been in the air because the pilot has not gone in a straight line. He's diverted, right? He's gone left and right and not gone in a straight line. So he's got no idea where he is, unless he thought that the pilot was going to go in a straight line and he's worked out where he's going to jump by the time, right, the plane will be over this. Right? And with his meticulous planning, but I think by this time the meticulous planning's out the window. He's lost it, absolutely lost it. Now the reason I know about these parachutes is because I did a parachute jump. 30 years, yeah, it was a good 30 years ago. I did a parachute jump for charity, and I did it with the Red Devils, the Army parachute formation team, and they did do weekends where you go along and you pay, and they take you up and they do the parachute jump. And most people do it for charity. Most people do it for charity. And we were raising money for a racing wheelchair for a young athlete in our village and also the local school. So when we went, you do a weekend's training, and in fact, the highest you jump is about a foot, and it just get you jumping off these little benches, tiny little benches, and you jump off of those and you learn how to land. That's all you're doing. You're learning how to land and land on your fleshy bits and one thing and another. And so you do that for a day. You turn up the next morning, they take you up in the plane and out you go. But you're dressed in a one-piece suit. You have got a helmet on. You have got a crash helmet on. And you're told to wear boots as well. So you're wearing their suit, their crash helmet, and your own boots. And you go up, you've been given instructions. If the parachute fails, it could tangle. That's probably about the only thing that can go wrong with those. I may be wrong. If you know different, let me know. But as far as I know, the only thing really is if they tangle, they won't deploy properly, and then you have a problem. So you've got a reserve parachute, which is on the front of you, and you pull that. Now, notice I call them parachutes because the Army Red Devils, the majority have always been in the parachute regiment, but I did know a fella who was not in the parachute regiment, who was in the Red Devils, and it was actually him that encouraged me to do this parachute jump. But that's another story. So I know that these parachutes, you cannot control them. You got a little bit of control. We were jumping into a large area in the centre of Aldershot. I think we jumped from 5,000 feet. And I remember you had to count 1,000, 2,000. When you got to 5,000, the canopy was deployed because you was on a cord attached to the plane. And obviously, it wasn't 4,000 feet. I don't know the mechanics of it, but it opens up the drag parachute, which pulls out the main parachute. And as you hit that, bang, it comes out. You're jerked back. And they tell you to check the parachute, which is the first thing I did, was look up to make sure it was in one piece and open. I mean, that goes without saying. That was the first thing probably the second thing I did. One was a bodily function after I jumped out that plane, I'll tell you. But anyway, and then there's nothing else you can do. They say, if you're going towards the road, bear in mind there's a dual carriageway on one side of the road. There's a canal on the other side of the field. So you've got a canal at the side there. You've got a road coming up there, and they tell you 100 feet, prepare to hit the ground. And you hit the ground quite fast. They say it's the equivalent of jumping off a 10-foot wall, something like that. But you certainly hit the ground at some speed. And that's with all of the proper equipment on, with a helmet as well. And I don't remember hitting my head, but it would be so easy to hit your head. But you go on your shoulders and you go for the fleshy parts. You hit the bones. you've got proper problems. So DB Cooper is not an experienced skydiver. He is not. If he was, he would have had a parachute where he could control it and he could land virtually where he wanted. If I'm saying that a bit tongue in cheek, because it's pouring with rain, it's pitch black, and he's got no idea where he is. So you would imagine that he, an experienced skydiver, would have used a parachute that was not as reliable as this one, but it was more controllable. Anyway, that was the last they heard of DB Cooper. He disappeared. They never ever found him. So the FBI set up, obviously, straight away, Operation Norjack. That's what they called it, Operation Norjack. And the hunt for DB Cooper is on. They scour the country looking for this fella. They've obviously got a number of the bills, right? These $20 bills. So they got an idea of what the numbers were, even though they were used bills. And the only evidence of his escapade came 9 years later, when a young boy was out fishing with his dad, and he found some of the notes, quite a quantity. It might have been a couple of grand's worth of these notes, and it was proved that they were the notes from the DB Cooper's hijack. So the FBI, all they've got is the eyewitness accounts, where he's jumped, right? And that is a guess as to where he's jumped, right? Because they know it's between Seattle and Reno, right? They know it's between Seattle and Reno from the pressure drop that they got in the cabin. That's all they know. And as far as I know, that's quite a distance between Seattle and Reno. So they are talking thousands, probably thousands upon thousands of square miles in which he could have landed in. When the boy found the notes, that didn't really give much of a clue as to where he was, because it was at the confluence of two rivers. So this could have washed down from absolutely miles away. So this cache could have washed down from miles away. The FBI, all they had to go on, as I say, was his facial features, the name that he was DB Cooper, obviously a false name. He's not going to go under his real name, is he? Or Dan Cooper. And his tie. So DB Cooper's not thought, I wonder if in years to come, they'll be able to trace me through that tie. That's where it all becomes interesting, because DNA technology comes along and they're able to trace people from historical DNA. But the FBI said that they couldn't actually trace from it. And I reckon I know why, right? Because I reckon nowadays, you see the police pick up a piece of evidence, right? They've got the vinyl gloves on, and they put it straight into a bag and they seal it, so as it's not contaminated. You can imagine these FBI blokes all handing around this tie, saying, oh, look at that, that's DB Cooper's. 10 years later, a new one comes in. Oh, well, I'm on the investigation there. Can I have a look at the tie? Might give me... So he picks it up, he's flicking fag ash all over it and all sorts. So I would imagine that is contaminated, and they just don't want to admit to it. They also had cigarette butts that he'd been smoking on the plane, and he'd left the cigarette butts behind. Now, that would have contained DNA, but apparently they lost those, and they did admit to that they went missing. They don't know where they were. Probably some cleaner came along one night after about 15 years. What are these doing lying here in a dustpan? And off they went down to the council tip. And they had people scouring. If we're talking about a massive manhunt, right? That changed the charges. The charges were skyjacking, and the statute of limitations on that was 5 years. So they change it to something else. So as there was no statute of limitations, and they could carry on looking for D.B. Cooper. And they actually closed the case after 45 years. This case, they were investigating it for 45 years. Can you imagine someone starting in the F.B.I. on his first day, straight out of school, and they say to him, "Oh, pal, there you go. You're on a D.B. Cooper case." And that's all he does for his whole career in the F.B.I. He's there for 45 years, and he retires, and he's sitting there with his gold watch, sitting in the pub. And the fellas, they're all sort of like saying, "Oh, you was in the F.B.I. You must have some stories to tell." Well, not really. I was only on one case. One case. There's hundreds of cases. No. I was only on one. D.B. Cooper. How'd you get on? We didn't find him. Can you imagine that, having your whole career, right, and you don't find the fella. Now, as we were talking, I've just thought of something, right? What if when no one saw him jump, right? They just had the door open. The door's opened, right? What if he's just got a wad of cash in elastic bands, thrown it out the door, shut the door, and then gone and hid somewhere, right? This is more like him with his meticulous planning, right? Because the rest of it just falls apart. But that could be meticulously planned, and he knows where he could hide. Did they search the plane afterwards? When it landed, did they actually search the plane? I don't know. And was he in it? Did he disguise himself as a cleaner? And when the cleaners came out he went, and with his rucksack probably hidden in a dustbin, out he went, and he didn't jump after all. He was hidden in the plane. And when they opened the door, he just threw out those notes, and it was only about $2,000 worth out of 200 grand that the boy found, right? He threw them out with the parachutes, right? Chucked the 2 parachutes out the door, and that was it. I don't know if anyone actually said, "I bet they ought to open this case again. I've got a new lead." I think that he actually didn't jump out that plane, right? He was hiding, and no one bothered to check. See, that's how laps they are. But I might be wrong. Might have been that 16-year-old boy came in and said, "Did anyone check the plane?" Right? And they went, "Oh, yeah, let's have a look at the plane." But anyway, let's assume that he did jump, right? Let's assume that he did, because everyone has got this. And if you got any theories, let me know. Let me know what you think has happened to D.B. Cooper, because I think my new one's great. That he didn't jump after all, and he hid himself in the plane and then sort of like sneaked out with the cleaners when they came on board. But anyway, we got to assume that he jumped. So where did he end up? We know that some money was found. So some money left that plane. We know he jumped in the dark, and we know he jumped from 10,000 feet, and we know it was pouring with rain, and we know he wasn't dressed for the occasion. We know that he had a parachute that he couldn't control, which wouldn't really matter anyway, because it's pitch black and he wouldn't be able to see the speed you're coming down. You would not be able to see where you're going. Now, I reckon, this is my theory, right? Apart from the new one I've just had, that's a great one, that is. Apart from the new one, my theory is they've all been looking on the ground. They've all been looking on the ground, and he's impaled on a tree. He is up there. You get these trees, they're 200 feet high, aren't they? These fir trees, Douglas firs, whatever they are, great giant redwoods, they're 200 feet high. I reckon he's impaled on them. Right? The bag split open, a couple of grand fell out, went in the river, washed down, and the boy found it 9 years later. They are looking in the wrong place. They are looking on the ground. All they got to do is wander the forest, looking up, and there he will be, just lying there. Well, not him. His clothes would have gone by now. They would have gone. So it'd just be the skeleton lying up there of D.B. Cooper, and maybe a bit of the rucksack left and some of the cash. But the F.B.I. carried on, and they did their investigations. And what's got me is I've watched a few documentaries on this, because I find it fascinating. I find it absolutely fascinating, the hunt for D.B. Cooper. And the press have come up with all of these different suspects. Now, they've hounded these men. They've absolutely hounded them. And their lives must have been made a misery by the press suddenly turning up saying, oh, you're DB Cooper. Prove that you're not. How do you prove you're not? Right? And you get another one saying, oh, my husband gave me a deathbed confession and told me that he was DB Cooper. Yeah, righto. Did you get paid for the story? I mean, what proof have you got? Anyone could say it. I mean, I could say, I know a fella living down the road, right? He's got a bit of an American accent. He's DB Cooper. He wears sunglasses all the time. I mean, the fella might have an eye condition, but he's got his sunglasses on, and that is proof for some of the press that he's DB Cooper. But if you're interested in this, I would say have a look at some of these documentaries, and I feel really sorry for these fellas. And I saw one quite recently. I mean, when I say recently, in the past year or two, and this fella, I think he was getting his boat out, and he was going for a little jaunt down the river or on the sea or whatever. And the press cameras, they couldn't get past the wire mesh fence, and they're shouting through at him, "Are you DB Cooper?" It's just absolutely ridiculous. And how do you get rid of them? How do you get rid of them? I just beggars belief that they're able to do it, but they are, and that's it. That's the way life is. And these poor fellas, some of them are now dead. They've got no way of proving their innocence, and then all of a sudden they say, "Oh no, we found out it wasn't them after all," and that's the end of it. Anyway, if you have like this, please subscribe. It all helps, and let me know your theories. I mean, as I say, I've just come up with that one, right, where maybe he didn't jump, just slung a few things out the door and shut the door, and then went and hid somewhere. I mean, that's quite plausible, really. I think the FBI should open that and say, look, we've had a new lead. It's as good as the ones that the press have got. I tell you, they just you just watch some of these documentaries on how tenuous their theories are. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and hope you've enjoyed it.